Do you know who's currently leading the United States? Yes, it's Donald Trump again. And his return to the White House in 2025 has already become an event that made Americans over 55, from veterans to retirees, hold their breath. But what will happen when this unpredictable leader faces off against Bill Maher, the master of sharp wit, live on air? Picture it, a studio in Los Angeles, April 10th, 2025, the smell of coffee in the air, and a thick tension hanging over everything. Tonight on Real Time with Bill Maher, something no one could have predicted is about to unfold. Is Trump ready for this challenge? And what's behind his decision to appear on the show of a man who's criticized him for years? The studio is buzzing, techs clanging equipment, stage lights humming with heat, and the audience whispering in anticipation. Bill Maher sits at his desk, his gray hair gleaming under the lights, a stack of notes in hand. He knows tonight could be either a triumph or a disaster. Backstage, Donald Trump adjusts his red tie in the mirror, his tan face radiating confidence. His aide, Trevor, scrolls nervously through his phone and mutters, "Boss, are you sure?" Social media is already blowing up. Half expect you to crush Maher, the other half think he'll destroy you. Trump turns to him, eyes narrowing. "Trevor, I'm not afraid of some comedian. I was president. I won the election twice. This is going to be huge, believe me." Meanwhile, out on the floor, producer Linda approaches Bill, holding a tablet. Her voice trembles. The sponsors called 3 times. They're scared Trump's going to say something that wrecks their ads. The lawyers are already standing by. Bill smirks with his signature crooked grin. "If we're afraid of sponsors, it's not my show anymore. I want people to see the real him. No script, no filters." The broadcast begins. The room erupts with applause and whistles as Bill walks on stage. He sits down, taps his pen on the desk, and looks into the camera. "Good evening, America. Tonight's guest is someone you either love or hate, but you definitely can't ignore. Please welcome President Donald Trump." Trump enters, waving like he's at a rally. His wide stride, his confident presence, he looks like the stage belongs to him. He sits across from Bill and throws out, "Bill, I heard you don't like me, but I came anyway." That's courage. Bill leans in, eyes gleaming. "Donald, I didn't invite you because I like or dislike you. I want to understand. Why are you here again in 2025 when half the country sees you as a savior and the other half a disaster?" The room goes still. The tension rises. Viewers at home, especially those who remember Trump from back in 2016, are holding their breath. Will Bill manage to provoke the president? Or will Trump outplay him on his own turf? But the biggest question is, what happens when the conversation moves beyond politics and touches something deeper? The real-time studio buzzed with tension, like the air before a thunderstorm. Bill Maher sat at his desk, gripping his pen tighter than usual, while Donald Trump, the sitting president of the United States, leaned back in his chair with a smug smile. The room fell silent, waiting for the next strike. For Americans over 55 who remembered the Trump years, from his first term to his unexpected comeback in 2024, this wasn't just a TV moment. It was a chance to see if someone could finally pull off his mask. But what would happen if Bill pushed too far? And why did Trump seem to be enjoying this battle? Bill glanced at his notes, then looked Trump straight in the eyes. "Donald, you returned to the White House promising to make America great again. But let's talk about reality. Gas prices are higher than when you left in 2021. The healthcare reform you promised never materialized. And farmers in Ohio still complain that your tariffs destroyed their exports. Why should people believe this time will be different?" Trump leaned forward, his voice louder, like at a rally. "Bill, you know I inherited chaos. Biden left me with a wrecked economy, inflation, debt, weakness. I brought back jobs, I brought back strength. Farmers? They love me because I fight for them against China. You can twist the numbers, but people feel the difference." The audience split, half applauding, half booing. Bill raised his hand to quiet the room, but his eyes flashed. "Feel the difference? Interesting. I get letters from people, regular people, not elites like you always say. One man from Michigan wrote that his small business shut down because of your trade wars. How do you explain that to him? Trump waved dismissively, as if swatting a fly. One man? I get millions of letters. Bill. Million. People say, Donald, you're our voice. Your guy from Michigan maybe just didn't know how to run a business. I can't save everyone. The room gasped. Bill leaned in closer, his voice sharper. So you admit your policies leave people behind? Because that sounds like, I did what I could, and the rest isn't my problem. Trump grimaced, but quickly regained composure. I'm saying America is a land of opportunity. I give people a chance, but they have to get up themselves. You want socialism? Go to Venezuela. The audience exploded, shouting, whistles, applause. Backstage, Linda, the producer, grabbed her headset and whispered, We're losing control. Commercial in 3 minutes, but I'm not sure we'll make it. The crew exchanged glances, and viewers at home, retired teachers, veterans, suburban seniors, felt their pulse quicken. Would Trump crack? Strike back? But Bill didn't stop. He hurled the next question like a grenade. All right, Donald, forget the economy for a second. Let's talk about what people care about most, trust. You still call the press enemies of the people. But when you pardoned your friends convicted of corruption and then gave them positions, doesn't that look like the swamp you promised to drain? Why should people trust you when your actions contradict your words? Trump clenched his fists, his face reddening. I pardon people who are unfairly accused. The best people, believe me. The press? They lie every day. You're part of it, Bill. You think you're smarter than everyone, but I'm here in front of you because the people chose me, not you. The room erupted again, but this time there was a hint of anger in Trump's voice that hadn't been there before. Bill noticed it and went all in. People chose you, sure. But do they know who they chose? I have a document, not fake, Donald, that shows your administration pressured the Texas governor to hide pollution data for your oil buddies. You call that protecting the people? Trump shot to his feet, his chair screeching across the floor. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every movement. He jabbed a finger toward Bill. That's a lie, and you know it. You want a scandal? I'll give you a scandal. I fight for America. And you sit here throwing mud like all those leftist clowns. The audience froze. Backstage, Linda shouted into her headset, Cut the mic. We're going to commercial. But Bill didn't back down. He stood, his voice calm but firm. I'm not throwing mud, Donald. I'm asking questions. And if you can't answer without yelling, maybe that says more about you than it does about me. Trump froze, his eyes burning. The room held its breath. Would he lash out? Storm off? Say something that shattered his image forever? The commercial break began, but no one moved. Viewers at home, especially those who'd lived through decades of political storms, realized this wasn't just a show. This was a moment of truth. What would happen when the cameras came back on? Could Bill turn the tide? And what was Trump hiding behind that fury? The commercial break dragged on, but no one in the real-time studio relaxed. The air smelled of hot stage lights and sweat. The tension was palpable. Technicians whispered behind the scenes. Linda held her head in her hands, and the audience exchanged glances, unsure whether to applaud or brace for a fight. Bill Maher stood by his desk, his face calm, but his eyes burned with cold resolve. Donald Trump, the sitting president of the United States, was still standing. His red tie had shifted slightly, and his chest heaved with anger. For Americans over 55 watching at home, retired mechanics in Pennsylvania, teachers in Florida, veterans in Texas, this wasn't just another television moment. It was the climax of years of political chaos, and everyone wanted to know, would Trump break? Would Bill back down? And what would happen when the truth, if it existed, came out? Emily, the stage coordinator, rushed into the studio, her voice trembling through the headset. 30 seconds to air. Everyone in position. Trump shot her a look, then turned back to Bill. You think you've won, huh? You throw around your little notes and think you can humiliate me? I'm the president, Bill. I'm not one of your stand-up guests. Bill sat back down, folding his hands on the table. His voice was calm, but sharp as a blade. I don't want to humiliate you, Donald. I want you to answer. People are watching, not your rally fans, but regular folks who want to know why their president can't explain his actions. Trump clenched his fists, but sat down, his eyes locked on Bill. You want answers? I'll give you answers. But you won't like them. The show resumed. Cameras came on, and the jingle played like nothing had happened. But the audience knew something had shifted. Bill looked into the camera, his smile thin but razor sharp. We're back with President Donald Trump. Before the break, I asked about the document showing your administration pressured Texas to cover up pollution from oil companies. You called it a lie. So explain this. Why did 3 officials from Texas's environmental department resign within a month of your inauguration? Trump leaned back, arms wide in a gesture familiar to anyone who had seen his speeches. Bill, it's simple. These people were bureaucrats who hated me before I even arrived. They were looking for a reason to leave. Pollution? I created jobs in Texas, oil, gas, energy. Do you want clean air or food on the table? People choose the latter. The audience stirred. Half applauded, half booed. But Bill didn't back down. Food on the table? Interesting. Because I spoke with a Texas farmer, Joe Kelly, 62, 3 generations of his family worked that land. He said your oil deals poisoned his well. Now he buys bottled water, and his cattle are dying. You call that jobs? Trump scowled, his voice dropping. One farmer? I have millions of success stories. You pick out one loser to prove a point? That's ridiculous. It's not ridiculous to Joe, Bill snapped. And it's not ridiculous to the people watching at home thinking, why can't the president look me in the eye and tell me what he's done for me? Trump slammed his fist on the table, not hard, but enough to silence the room. I look America in the eye every damn day, Bill. I fight China. I fight those idiots in Congress. I fight for the people who voted for me. And you? You sit here and read your little stories like you're some kind of hero. Behind the scenes, Linda whispered into her headset, we're losing ratings. Or gaining. I can't tell. But Bill changed tactics. He brushed his notes aside and looked at Trump not as a host, but as a person. Donald, forget the documents and stats for a second. You're the president. You sit in the White House. But when I look at you, I see a man at war with everyone, the press, the Democrats, even your own people. Why can't you just stop and say, here's what I did right, here's where I messed up? Why does everything always have to be a battle? Trump froze. His jaw tightened, but for the first time all night, he didn't speak right away. The room held its breath. The viewers at home, the ones who remembered Watergate, Vietnam, the 2008 crash, knew this wasn't just TV. This was a moment. The mask might fall. Would Trump admit even one mistake? Would he explode again? And what would happen if Bill pushed harder? Trump finally spoke. His voice was lower, but still firm. Because if I stop, they win. The press, the elites, everyone who wants America weak. I can't afford mistakes, Bill. People expect me to be strong. Bill leaned forward, eyes fixed on Trump. But what if strength isn't shouting the loudest? What if strength is telling the truth, even when it hurts? Trump opened his mouth, but didn't get to reply. Emily shouted from backstage, commercial. Now, the screen faded to black. But the tension remained. Viewers at home could feel it. Something big was coming. Would Trump crack? Would Bill break through? And what would happen when the cameras came back on? The screen lit up again, and real time returned to the air. But this time, the atmosphere had shifted, not just tense, but fragile, like glass ready to shatter at the slightest touch. Bill Maher sat at the desk, his hands calm, but his eyes closely watching Donald Trump. The President of the United States sat across from him, his red tie still slightly askew, and his face a mixture of anger and something new, elusive. The room held its breath. Viewers at home, Americans over 55 who had weathered decades of political storms, from the Cold War to Trump rallies, felt this was more than a show. This was a moment that could go down in history. Would Trump break? Would he walk out? Or would something happen that no one expected? Bill spoke first, his voice quiet but piercing. Before the break, I asked why you can't stop and admit even one mistake. You said you can't afford to show weakness. But I think, Donald, real weakness is hiding behind shouting and blame. People are watching. They want to know who you really are. Trump pressed his lips together, his fingers tapping on the table. The room braced for an outburst, another stream of loud words he was known for. But this time, he remained silent longer than usual. His eyes, always so confident, flicked across the audience, then landed back on Bill. And then something happened that shocked everyone. You know, Bill, he began, his voice lower, almost tired, I don't sleep at night. You think I don't feel it? Millions of people expect me to get everything right. I came back because they asked me to. But, he paused, swallowing hard, sometimes I look at my grandchildren and wonder, will they understand why I'm doing this? The audience gasped. Backstage, Linda dropped her tablet, her eyes wide. The tech crew froze, camera zoomed in, capturing every movement. Bill leaned forward, eyebrows raised in surprise. You think about your grandkids? He asked, trying to hide his disbelief. Then why don't you tell people that? Why is it always about winning, and never about what you feel? Trump looked at him, and for the first time that evening, his gaze wasn't combative, it was human. Because if I say it, they'll think I'm weak. America doesn't want a weak president. But you're right about one thing, he paused again, as if the words were hard to say, I'm not perfect. I've made choices that maybe hurt people. Like that farmer in Texas. I didn't know about as well. And I'm sorry. The word sorry hung in the air like thunder on a clear day. The audience burst into whispers, someone even applauded, but quickly fell silent. Bill leaned back, his mouth nearly agape. In his entire career, he hadn't expected Trump to say anything like that. Not live, not in front of millions. You're sorry? Bill asked softly. Donald, that's more than I expected. Why don't you say things like this more often? Trump smiled, not his usual broad grin, but something humbler. Because you're the first to ask without trying to destroy me. You want the truth? Here it is. I fight for America, but I'm not a god. And I'm tired of war. Maybe it's time we talk for real. Bill nodded, his face softening. Then let's talk. Not as enemies, but as people. What would you say to Joe Kelly, that farmer, if he were here? Trump thought for a moment, his fingers no longer drumming. I'd say, Joe, I didn't mean to hurt you. Let's find a way to fix this. You deserve clean water, and I'll make sure you get it. That's what I'd say. The audience erupted in applause, not the thunderous kind from a rally, but warm, sincere. Backstage, Linda exhaled, whispering, we didn't just save the show. We did something bigger. Bill reached across the table. Trump looked at the hand, hesitated for a second, then shook it, firmly, but without challenge. Cameras captured the moment, and viewers at home, retired teachers, veterans, small-town seniors, felt something stir inside them. This wasn't one man defeating another. It was the beginning of something new, not perfect, not finished, but real. Bill turned to the camera, his voice gentle yet steady. America, we didn't solve every problem tonight. But maybe we started something that matters. Good night. The screen faded to black amid loud applause. But the story wasn't over. Social media exploded with comments. Did Trump just admit a mistake? Bill made him talk like a real person. Joe Kelly, the farmer from Texas, got a call from the White House the next day. No one knew what would come of it, but he held the phone with hope. And Americans over 55 who had tuned in felt a quiet euphoria, not from scandal, but from seeing a glimpse of humanity where they least expected it.